Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 2016 science fiction thriller Spectral. Spectral is a film that I actually was looking forward to. The trailer surprised me. I thought it looked like an actually pretty decent movie. I thought it could be a good film. I liked the concept behind it. I thought it was a cool concept. It was an intriguing idea. The idea of soldiers versus ghosts, which is an idea that I've always wanted to see on film. I've actually had that kind of concept float around in my head for many years because I think the idea of soldiers going up against an enemy that they can't see, that's faster than they are, and is impervious to all of their attempts to try to destroy it, uh, which effectively makes their weapons useless, I always thought was a very uh, scary and potentially thrilling concept. And I know they've done some kind of stuff like that with Predator, but Predator's not a ghost. The Predator is using a cloaking technology to be that kind of makes it be it makes it kind of like a ghost, but it really isn't. The Predator's still an alien. The Predator is still technically flesh and blood. Now, the idea that it's something that's just a spectral, that is a specter, that you just can't, you bullets go right through it, doesn't do anything, I always thought was very scary. And there are some really tense moments in this movie that are directly attributed to this concept, to this idea. Now, I know a lot of critics are going out there saying this is generic, or this doesn't do anything different, or it doesn't cover any new ground or break any new ground. And I'm like, how many movies out there have soldiers versus ghosts? I see these critics say, oh, soldiers versus ghosts, if you're into that kind of thing and wanted to see another movie like that, what movies are there that are like this? Because I can't think of one. Please feel free to let me know in the comments down below what other movies there are where it's soldiers versus ghosts. Please feel free to do that because I can't think of one. And in a lot of ways, this film reminded me of Battle Los Angeles, which I also really liked. I know a lot of critics didn't care for that movie, but I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was a really good movie. And for the most part, I thought this is a really good movie. It wasn't great. I think there were a few things that it didn't include, a few exemptions that I feel if they were added to the movie, it would have made it a potential classic great movie. But as it is, I mean, this is not a film that was bad enough to not get a theatrical release. And what do I mean by that? Well, this was meant to have a theatrical release. The reason why this movie looks so good for a Netflix original movie is because it is not a Netflix original movie. This is clearly a multi-million-dollar production. But Netflix ended up requiring the rights to distribute it because Universal essentially disowned the film. This was originally going to be a Legendary Productions Universal film. Universal was going to release this film in theaters sometime this year, but they decided not to because they were disillusioned and disappointed by the box office of Legendary Pictures' other film, Warcraft. So instead of this film never seeing the light of day, Netflix, in a shrewd and actually a really brilliant move, decided to pretty much buy the film from Universal and then distribute it and stream it on Netflix as one of their Netflix original movies. So, I gotta say thank you. I gotta give Netflix a big hand for actually going out there, paying some money, and to get this movie because it really would have been too bad if this never saw the light of day. Because there's a lot of really excellent things about Spectral. And personally, it's one of my favorite films of the year. I would have easily paid to see this in the theater because I liked the idea enough. It got me curious enough that I would have definitely paid to see this in the theater sometime. Now, Spectral is a film that's directed by Nic Mathieu, and this is his directorial debut, and I think it's a really spectacular, really excellent, and kind of amazing directorial debut for a guy who's never directed a single film before in his life. Um, this is a movie that I don't think he was the first choice to direct. There's a few other directors, but they ended up turning the film down. So, and Nic Mathieu was one of the guys who helped create the story for the film. And apparently he decided, well, maybe I can direct it. And he picked up the reins and he ran with it. This does not look like a film that's directed by somebody who has never directed a film before. He really knows how to set up his shots. He knows how to make the film look and feel cinematic and not static like a TV movie. He knows how to work with his actors. He knows how to work with visual effects. And I am honestly looking forward to this man's other directorial efforts if he does get another chance. And I hope he does, because I think he deserves it. He's one of the better directors I've seen from this year. Everything I've seen from this film shows me this guy deserves another shot to direct another movie. Now, it's based on a screenplay by George Nolfi and a story by Ian Freed and Nic Mathieu. And it stars James Badge Dale as Dr. Mike Clayne, who is our lead. And that was refreshing to see in a kind of a horror sci-fi thriller where you have a male lead. And he's a scientist. He's not a big, buff, muscly guy. He's a scientist. He's a normal guy. He's just like you or me. I thought it was he was a very relatable lead. And I thought the performance by James Badge Dale was phenomenal. That was a great performance. Emily Mortimer plays Fran Madison, who is a CIA officer who runs the Delta Force operations in Moldova's war-torn capital. And I thought she was a nice companion, a nice little piece for James Badge Dale to bounce off of. She was more of a serious sort of actress, a serious character. And what I also really liked about the film is and about her character, is that she was not eye candy. She wasn't a supermodel. She wasn't some Victoria's Secret supermodel who was hired just for her looks and not for her acting. She's a good actress. And she's not an ugly woman, per se. But, I mean, I would have to say she's probably above average in terms of looks. But, you know, hey, I liked that. It was refreshing to see a woman who was cast for her acting skills and not for her looks. And also, her character is not a love interest. So for all the people saying this film is cliched and so on, this film had a few elements in it that I'd not seen in a movie in a long time. And one of them was having the female co-star being a companion and more of a partner, in terms of work partner versus a love partner or a love interest. She was just his companion. That's all she was. She helped him out, and she held her own when she had to, and there wasn't any kiss at the end. There wasn't any forced love story that's just in the movie because the movie wants one. So that was really refreshing to see. A female co-star who isn't eye candy and is not a love interest. You also had Max Martini, who played Major Sessions, who's the leader of the Delta Force team. I liked him as well. I thought he was I thought he was a believable major. And I've seen him in a few films. I don't remember him making that much of an impression, but it seems like I personally think he was one of the better actors in the film, and I definitely do think that he definitely has made a huge step up from films like Sabotage and Pacific Rim. So, I would have to say this is one of his better performances. You also have the always adequate, the always solid, the always effective Bruce Greenwood as General Orlan, who's the leader of the U.S. Army troops deployed to fight in the Moldovan War. And you also have Clayne Crawford, who plays a sergeant, Cory Hardict, who plays another sergeant. So you have Sergeant Toll, Sergeant Alessio, and a few other actors and actresses. But for the most part, it's James Badge Dale, Emily Mortimer, Max Martini and Bruce Greenwood's film. So it's a film that has a kind of a small cast, but they all perform really well. Now, the movie also features a score by Junkie XL, and this isn't one of their best scores. This isn't one of his best scores, but there are some moments though where it does shine, and it's not a terrible score by any means, but at best it's mediocre. It's okay. But there are some few bits here and there that are kind of epic that I did like. But for the most part, it's not particularly that memorable. There's cinematography by Jason, it's by Bojan Bazeli, and I think for the type of film that they're trying to make, it was cinematography that definitely did fit the film. It's just definitely not cinematography that, well, I mean, it's some certain shots, like inside of the facility, the top secret, facility, near the end, and some of the shots, from overhead, or some of the shots of the aircraft carriers and stuff like that. They were pretty cool, but for the most part, and pretty impressive in terms of cinematography. But for the most part, it's a serviceable job. The editing by Jason Ballantine is another serviceable job. So it's cinematography or it's editing. It's not going to blow you away. The score isn't going to blow you away or anything, and the story might not necessarily blow you away either. But what I did like about the story, and I don't want to give this away, is how the Spectrals are, how their origins are explained. How it's explained what these Spectrals are. I thought that was really clever. I thought so. I know some people might disagree, but I thought it was pretty clever because I didn't see it coming. Now, I'm just going to go a quick little run through of the basic plot. And pretty much this film is what you think it is. It opens up with a soldier who is in Moldova. I don't even know if that's a real country or not. And it looks a lot like Russia. And so these soldiers are in a war in Moldova, and there's this unseen presence, this unseen enemy that is going around killing soldiers. So the soldiers have now been outfitted with these special goggles, these spectrometers that are of some sort that enable them to see these spectrals. And well, this poor guy, he sees one and it ends up killing him in the beginning of the film. And it reminded me of a video game. It was totally a shot straight from a video game, like Call of Duty or something. And I like that. I like the first-person shooter sort of aspect of the opening of the film. That was a nice way to open the movie, a nice way to grab you. This is kind of where the horror element kind of stops, though. There are a few moments here and there where soldiers get picked off one by these spectrals that are pretty, not necessarily scary, but definitely thrilling. But I felt that there's some creepy moments, like the soldiers, when they get hit by these spectrals, they get frozen and their eyes turn white. And so when you see the aftermath, it's pretty eerie. But there isn't like gore. There isn't really a big horror element here. It's more of a sci-fi thriller. And that's one of the elements that I did feel was missing. I think they could have really played up the horror aspect. And I also felt that the movie could have had a harder edge to it because I don't think it's rated, but if it was, it probably would be PG-13 because there isn't really a hard edge to it. But even without that, it's still, I thought, a really entertaining movie. So these soldiers are dying, and so the military now is trying to figure out, okay, what are these things? What are these spectrals? What are they? Are they a weapon of some kind? Are they some other soldiers, Moldovan soldiers, and in camouflage? And so they bring in this expert, this scientist named Dr. Mark Clayne, played by James Badge Dale. And earlier they were showing him working on a military experiment on this sort of laser that can like melt things. And you know, it's basically like a laser weapon, a laser rifle. And that's one thing about the film I also really liked. I love the tech stuff. I'm always a fan of seeing how new technology is built and seeing new technology on film. And I love that stuff. I love the weapons. I loved it. I love the goggles. And they were all practical. They were all practical effects that were created by the Weta Workshop. And well, the Weta Workshop, you already know, I mean, they're very talented people. And they lended their talents to this film. And I, I'm really glad that they did, because the production and art design in this is a huge feather in this film's cap. Now, this doctor is then brought on board to this military, not really experiment, but this military situation, this military mission of some kind. And what they want him to do is to take this camera that he's built that is able to take high quality photos of these spectrals. And so he tags along with this group of Delta Force guys, puts a camera on one of their tanks or their vehicles, and then they encounter some spectrals. All hell breaks loose. Dozens of soldiers get knocked out and get killed in a blink of an eye. Then they're stranded. They end up being stranded in Moldova, trying to fend off these spectrals and trying to stay alive. And that's kind of the film. Like, how are they going to stay alive? What are they going to do in order to maybe find a potential weakness for these spectrals? How are they going to find a way to be able to see these spectrals, because they can't see them? And ultimately, if they do manage to get out of this situation, well, what are they going to do to stop these spectrals from basically just destroying the entire, town, the entire country of Moldova, and then the rest of the world? Because these seem to be rapidly spreading. So the soldiers can't shoot them with their guns. They can't blow them up with tank rounds. They can't blow them up with bazookas. So they got to come up with new technology to be able to fight these spectrals. And how are they going to do that? Now, I know I've heard some critics say that, oh, it's unrealistic. Oh, how they managed to create these weapons out of spare parts. And that's the moment when the film jumped the shark. And I'm like, I don't understand that criticism, because for one, it's a science fiction thriller. It's not reality. Second, if you were willing to suspend your disbelief for so long while watching the movie, but then this one moment is the moment where the movie goes off the rails and you're going to like give it a bad rating because, oh, well, there's no way they would have been able to create weapons with spare parts. I mean, come on. Really? It's a movie. It's not reality. So, I just had to throw that out there, because I always said that's a lot of the criticism I see for this movie, and I think they're kind of absurd. They're kind of ridiculous. I mean, I have to admit, I probably would touch up upon that if I didn't like the movie, but I like the film, so I was able to easily suspend my disbelief for all of this stuff, including the MacGyvering these really cool-looking weapons that they use to be able to fight off the spectrals. And yeah, ultimately, I thought this was a fun movie. It's got a good pace to it. The first 40 minutes are really well paced. It's not boring at all. I like the characters. It's got likable characters, good performances by the cast. It's got a cool concept that is executed for the most part really well. Like, the only things I really honestly think this film is missing is, like I said, amp up the horror, a little bit more action. I think that would have been nice to see. And other than that, those are the only problems I really have with the movie. I think it just had more of a horror element to it, more action, maybe a little bit better score, and I can't really think of anything else though. And maybe the look of the Spectrals is kind of bland, so maybe you could have done something a little bit more with that, made them stand out a little bit more. But other than that, I think this is a really good movie. Um, and I think it's a gem. I think it's an underrated film. I think it's a movie that I think you should definitely check it out, whether you have Netflix or not. Um, and like I said earlier, it's a shame that it didn't get a theatrical release. It didn't even get a chance to be a hit. Maybe it wouldn't have been a hit, but maybe it might have been. Who knows? I know I would have seen it. I know I would have seen the movie. I know I would have given money to it because this is what I want. I want a film that takes an idea that might be familiar but then puts its own spin on it. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking forward to. That's the kind of more this is the type of film that I want to see more of in Hollywood today. Is this type of movie that takes an idea that yeah, kind of like Ghostbusters, but they do a unique, interesting spin on it. It's not the same thing. It's similar, but it's different enough that it is not the same. And if they were going to do a remake or reboot of Ghostbusters, this is the kind of direction I would have loved them to take. But instead they took the lazy, hacking, unexpired, shitty route with the reboot. So yeah, if you want to see something like Ghostbusters, watch Spectral. Skip the reboot. Watch Spectral. I think it's actually, like I said, I think it's a really good movie. It's not a great film, but it's a really good film for what it is. And yeah, I think the climax was definitely satisfactory. I think it was a satisfying climax. Um, maybe could have had a bit more action, but I thought for the most part it was effectively suspenseful, and there was a moment near the end that definitely did really tug at my heartstrings. It hit me in the heart because it is pretty tragic, and yeah, I definitely thought this is one of the better films I've seen this year. So I don't know what else, I do not know what else to say about Spectral, except if I was going to rate it out of 5 stars. I give the movie 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said, I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a really good movie that was entertaining. It had good characters. It had a interesting idea behind it. The pacing was really good for the most part, really fast-paced. It was suspenseful and thrilling. And also, I want to throw this out there. It wasn't as cliched as I thought it was going to be. Because you had, once again, like I said earlier, you had the female co-star who isn't a love interest, who isn't eye candy, and you also, in this film, also had the balls to kill a kid. And I always commend a film for doing that because it raises the stakes so much higher in a movie like this. Because, wow, this entity or whatever it is doesn't fuck around. It doesn't pussyfoot around things. It doesn't pick and choose its victims. Everyone is at risk. Your children are at risk. You're at risk. Everyone has potential to die. And that raises the stakes and it raises the suspense. And I got to give the writers huge props for having the balls to do that, especially in 2016. So that's what I'm talking about when I don't get what people are saying, oh, this movie's literally cliches. Yeah, there's a few cliches here and there, but like, you know, the military guy, the general having some pep talk speech, but it didn't bother me. But then there's other things like a female co-star who isn't a love interest and isn't eye candy, and a film that has the balls to kill a kid. So, yeah, those are some elements that I thought were honestly overlooked by a lot of critics when they were talking about this movie and when they were reviewing it. But yeah, these are just my thoughts on the film. I do recommend it. I think it's worth a watch, especially if you like the trailer, if the idea interests you. And yeah, thanks for watching. And as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.